Protesters have been saying to make Muskrat right. Ian 30, it's the Privacy Commissioner on the use of private emails by Natural Resources Minister Siobhan Cody and others. Then we'll take you to a nurses' rally in Happy Valley Goose Bay. Stephanie Kinsella is standing by at the on-the-go traffic desk. But up first, let's have a look at the weather. For the island tonight, some showers developing this evening over the Avalon. Mainly cloudy with scattered showers or flurries elsewhere. Lows around -1 in the north, up to +5 in the east tonight. Tomorrow, a mix of sun and cloud in the west. Mainly cloudy with scattered showers or flurries elsewhere, and highs from 2 to 6. For Labrador tonight, mainly cloudy with isolated flurries in the southeast and the west. Cloudy elsewhere. Lows from -13 in Lab West to -2 in the southeast. Tomorrow promises a mix of sun and cloud for all of Labrador, with highs ranging from -9 in Lab West to 2 above down by the Strait of Belle Isle. That's your weather. Now to the roads, and Stephanie Kinsella.
Well, we've been telling you all afternoon about some of the protesters leaving the Muskrat Falls construction site, and RCMP there are warning motorists to drive with caution on Route 510 near the site, as lots of vehicles and pedestrians are expected in the area. That's throughout the afternoon. Back here in St. John's, there is an accident on Topsail Road affecting eastbound traffic. This happened near Jane's Auto Body and Honda One, and slowdowns are reported in that area right now. If you see anything else we should know about, give me a call, 576-5225, or you can reach out via Twitter. Use the hashtag NLTraffic.
It is coming up on 18 minutes to 5 now. That's 12 after 4 in most parts of Labrador. There's a headline on our website, cbc.ca/NL, that reads, "I need to know what all of this means." It's a quote from Denise Cole, who took part in the protests over the clearing of the Muskrat Falls Reservoir. And she's not alone. I'm still not sure what the government of Newfoundland and Labrador has agreed to. Maybe you're that way too. To walk us through this, we're joined now by Perry Trimper. He is this province's Minister of Environment. You can keep listening to this conversation here on the radio or watch it online right now on our website, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Mr. Trimper, good afternoon. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much.
Now, lots of stuff to talk about. I want to try and break it down into digestible parts here. The first question, there's a special committee to be struck to look into methyl mercury concerns. How's that going to work? Who's going to be on that?
Well, actually, the committee is going to look at a whole bunch of things around this project. And if you've been listening to what I've been saying for the last 12 months, Ted, or anybody else who's out there, I've been talking a lot about the need for a dialogue, an informed dialogue, and a place where questions that are being raised around this project can be addressed. The Nunatsiavut government also, in their Make Muskrat Right campaign, have been identifying the need for an independent expert advisory committee. As soon as I started seeing that earlier this year, I thought about a model, and in the 4th of August, I proposed it. So essentially, it's modeled after similarly what was proposed for the D&D low-level flying activity. It was called the Institute for Environmental Monitoring and Research. And it was a third-party group. It had representation from the Aboriginal groups, from municipalities, key provincial and federal departments. Similarly, with this project, I've been advocating for some time that this is needed. So I've, in previous announcements around this project, that my role is we shift government's policy around how we provide the oversight on this project. We really got into the details of that last night.
All right. Now, according to the news release that the Premier put out this morning, initial flooding of the reservoir to the minimal acceptable level will be pushed back a number of days until further independent assessment confirms the timing and the rationale of initial impoundment. What does that mean? To me, it sounds like you're not convinced the flooding needs to happen.
Let's just say that the folks outside of Nalcor are having these questions. So those reports, frankly, were just released and provided to the Indigenous organization leaders last night. They're reviewing them now. We've asked them to go through them. If they have concerns around Nalcor's assertion that they need to complete this first phase of flooding, we want to hear from them. So with that and all of the other topics that we're going to deal with here, I suggest in the next few minutes, what we're saying is we're going to let the science speak for itself. And if the scientists working in third party agree that changes need to be made to this project, what we're saying is as a government, we're willing to make those changes.
All right, and who is going to conduct this science? Because we've had the Harvard study on one side, we've had Nalcor saying we've got our own people with differing opinions. Who's going to be the definitive source of information as we go through this process?
Well, if I go back to the structure, I talked about this independent expert advisory committee. So you have a third-party chair. We've asked the 3 Indigenous organizations. Last week, I sent them a letter inviting them to submit nominations for who could serve as a CEO. What other representation would they like to see on that organization? That group, and you know, folks who've been in Labrador for the last 20 years will know very well how the IEMR worked on a complicated project which had a lot of controversy. So as I speak about it, and I unveiled it in August at a large workshop where all of these parties were together, we all were nodding our heads, said, yes, that is a function, that is a vehicle that could work in this situation. So people are anxious to get on with it, and I'm pleased to say that my staff have already started to draw it up. We don't want to go too far. We do want to get people in place, but we'd like them to come up with their own terms of reference. What we've said as a government is that we are willing to take the recommendations from that organization, from that body, that will guide, it will direct how I need to work as a minister. And if there's changes that need to be made in the project, we're willing to do it.
All right, let's talk about who makes that call, though. I hear several things in the news reports and in the news releases from the government. One reference says the government says this remediation may include clearing trees, vegetation, and/or soil from the reservoir. The Premier says the government retains the right to have a final say on any recommendations the committee puts forward. On the other hand, we have Todd Russell from Nunatuavut who's saying this to the CBC earlier today.
We have a commitment that if the science says that the soils must be removed, there is a commitment that the soils will be removed.
So is it a must? Is it a may? How is that part of this work?
Let's talk about it. In terms of the structure, this is a third-party, independent organization made up of representation of government. The proponent will also have to be there, as well as key groups such as these Indigenous organizations, municipalities, and so on. They will need to reach a consensus. They will need to come up with recommendations. Myself, as a minister, we hope to identify very soon a federal minister. We will then be taking those recommendations. And, government always does, as the Premier said, retains the right to make the decisions and actually implement the direction. But I can tell you, it'll be very difficult to ignore the direction coming out of this. And that's, what we were working through the night with everyone involved was to find the words, to find the assurances that people would be comfortable that this will indeed be an evidence-based, science-driven exercise. And that if indeed, and we are saying as a government, let me just back up. Newfoundland and Labrador, this administration is saying we will not allow a project to proceed if in its design it is going to end up in affecting the human health of people of Lake Melville. That's not on. So if we understand that by leaving the soil in place, that this will cause a significant effect on the human health of people downstream, we're going to do something about it.
But who defines significant? Whether the methyl mercury levels go up a little or a lot, who draws that line?
Well, absolutely. And this is why you need the experts. It's a complicated topic. You're talking about human health and risk assessment. There's biologists, chemists, all needing to get involved. So it's everything from understanding what typically happens, what may happen under the special circumstances that exist here. The work that the Nunatuavut government, for example, have done. They've identified sort of a heightened biological zone out in Lake Melville. You've heard perhaps some discussion around that. So that's a very interesting addition. And that new information, frankly, is what I've been working with as a minister over the last 10 months now, is incorporating that understanding and moving. And as we're closer and closer with the folks that are raising these concerns, we have been moving and further and further. So here we are now at a point where we are saying, listen, if the direction, the recommendations are such that we need to do more, we're going to do it.
Do you have any idea at this point whether the initial flooding, the partial flooding of the reservoir, and then draining it again, whether that has any impact on your ability to take the organic matter out of that part of the valley? We
don't believe so, and I can say that for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's the key, or better said, Ted, if I could, the key issue, I think, is, will this result in an unnecessarily high level of methyl mercury now if we allow this first flooding to occur? It's interesting that this activity, it's a very naturally occurring type of process. You take mercury that's bound up. When it's covered by water under sort of warmer temperatures, you get methylmercury created. The fact of the matter is, in Labrador, you only get about 3 months of the year where you have a heightened biological activity. During the winter and those cold months, you get essentially no to negligible increases in methylmercury. The NG researchers, the Shardup et al. Paper, identifies the same situation. So what we were able to work on through the days leading up to last night's marathon was an understanding that if we did this, what would it mean? And in fact, given the science that's out there, we see very little influence on future levels of methylmercury as a result of this first flooding. It would allow the integrity of the infrastructure that's in place to be protected, according to Nalcor. And again, we're still waiting for, the three Indigenous organizations took this 8 reports or more, and they're reviewing them right now. We're expecting feedback. So we'll see what the conclusion is from them.
If the panel with the scientific recommendations says you've got to clear out all that organic matter, do you have any idea at this date how long that process might take?
Not yet. And the other way that we may receive these recommendations, it may be that, maybe you only need to take a portion out. Maybe you only need to take out this particular type of soil. Maybe only at this situation. So there's a lot of direction that's going to be needed to come. I'm pleased to say I have some confidence, Ted, that this can work, because on the 4th of August at a large workshop we had in Goose Bay, we had a lot of folks around the table talking about this very same topic. There was a variety of topics raised, but when we got to this, the dialogue was such that I could see that the logistics, the regulatory, the legal issues, biological, environmental, and so on, that there can be a dialogue and an exploration as to whether or not this is necessary. As Nalcor and myself, as responsible for jurisdiction, has been saying, it's never been done before.
All right, and I'm kind of putting the cart before the horse there. I should have asked you first. How long is it going to take? How long have you set aside to set up this panel, to let them do their work and prepare a recommendation, and then for the government and the other parties to consider those recommendations?
For the last several weeks, we've started to prepare with the solid agreement we received last night, early this morning. I'm pleased to say that I feel now we're in a spot where we can move forward. I received that assurance from the 3 leaders early this morning. Last week, I sent them an invitation to submit nominees for CEOs who could serve on this, as well as who they would like to have represent each of their organizations. I'm going to be doing the same with the federal and provincial departments, municipal leaders as well.
Why has it taken all of this time, all of these protests, the hunger strikers and all that, to get to this point? This is a project that your government inherited from the PCs, despite what Mr. Davis says, that it's got nothing to do with his party. This is something you inherited, but as recently as 6-7 months ago, we're talking to Nalcor, and they're saying, our science is fine, we're happy with that, we don't need to remediate the reservoir. Now we're here. Why did we have to go through all of this emotional angst?
Yeah. It's, I think back, while the last 12 hours were challenging, I can go back 12 months myself. And my background is in science. I know a lot about this project. I started to identify long before I was elected that this issue needed a resolution of dialogue. And I have to say that while there's been assertions that such mitigations were not necessary and so on, from the perspective of the protesters, from the perspective of the Aboriginal leaders that were in the room last night, they've been dismissed. And since I've become elected and become appointed as a minister, I can point to a series of meetings, slowly but surely, getting everybody in the room. I finally was able to achieve that on the 4th of August. The dialogue started there. It has been a shift. And as we saw the new information that came forward through the summer from the Nunavut government researchers, the increasing level of concern and so on, you're constantly incorporating this input and understanding that shifts in policy, shifts in understanding are needed.
Do you have any idea today how much extra this is going to cost, the delays, the possible remediation? How much extra is added to the Muskrat Falls bill because of this?
Yeah, again, you're getting ahead. So we're waiting to see what this independent experts advisory committee is going to direct. recommend to us.
But and with all due respect, they're not going to recommend that you leave everything there. I'm pretty sure we're probably at least going to have to remove something, and there will be some delays. So I'm just wondering what the cost might be.
The experts are going to have to go through this. Is a complicated exercise in terms of human health risk through to what's in the reservoir now. The measures that we've already announced, including last week, I identified and ordered Nalcor to move towards this full clearing of vegetation scenario. If you can get all that organic material out of the reservoir, it's a beneficial situation in terms of reducing levels of methylmercury. The question is around the soil, and does more soil need to be removed? So that is a question that we're going to direct to this table, and we're going to wait for that feedback. Again, it could be some combination of we need to get every cubic meter of it out of there through to perhaps it's not necessary at all. And again, there are environmental issues on trying to remove it. So it's a challenge. It's not clear cut. It's not straightforward, but we're certainly going to have a serious look.
However that works out, there will be added cost to a project that's already seriously, significantly over budget. We've heard previously the current CEO of Nalcor, Stan Marshall, agreeing that Muskrat Falls is a boondoggle. Is it even a bigger boondoggle now?
Well, it's almost a question for outside of my mandate. I'm a regulator, and I'm also somebody who lives in Lake Melville. These are friends and neighbors of mine who were out on the protest lines, and I can feel the emotion. I got to say, they've certainly been in touch with me. Their concern has been about human health, and right now that has to be the priority. As I said a few minutes ago, and the Premier's very eloquently stated this, is that we are not going to support a project which is going to jeopardize the human health of people of this province. So that has got to be resolved. It's very unfortunate we find ourselves at this situation. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. We should have been at this years ago and had that dialogue and had that exploration and had everybody feeling much more comfortable about what was happening here.
All right, Mr. Trimper, I want to thank you for coming by and walking us through this.
Thank you, Ted.
That is Barry Trimper. He is this province's Minister of the Environment. What do you make of what you've heard? Does it make you feel better? Call Talkback. Let me know. 1-800-465-6846 is the number to dial. Our email address is on the go at cbc.ca.